Well, since I mentioned Cruella in my Disney Live Action Remake video, link to that in the description below, I suppose I should give you my thoughts on it. Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it somewhere in between? Let's waste no time and jump right into the review. So, this is actually the second time that Disney has attempted to reinvent one of their classic iconic villains and turn them into the protagonist of their own story. The first, of course, being Maleficent, using Wicked as a guide. So I guess it's fitting that their second film would use Joker as a guide. Okay, to be fair, this film was conceived and written before Joker, and the film's tones and styles are completely different, so the similarities are surface level. The biggest similarity I can see is that, like Arthur Fleck, Estella is a victim of society, and life just heaped a whole bunch of crap all over both of them. That's pretty much it. Because unlike Joker, which was a nihilistic origin story of how a mentally disturbed man was pushed to the brink into accepting his evil side, this film, much like Maleficent, is how Cruella was just misunderstood, and if only she had been appreciated for the fashion genius that she was, she wouldn't have turned out so, well, okay, maybe not evil, because to be honest, she doesn't really do anything that evil in this movie. Because that would actually be interesting. But instead, she wouldn't have turned out so slightly morally gray. So, yeah, right off the bat, as you can tell, there's a problem with the premise. The original Cruella de Vil, while a fun villain, is a flat character with no dimension, which is fine because that's what the original film called for. She's over the top evil and deliciously nasty. So, trying to explore the nuance and subtleties of such an evil character is, well, it's a challenge to say the least, and it's a challenge I don't think contemporary Disney is capable of pulling off. And it definitely does not help that this film is being used as a springboard for a woman's empowerment story. Really. This origin story of what is supposed to be female Satan in human form is what you're going to use for a female empowerment story. Disney, does the phrase tone deaf mean anything to you? So, okay. Since it's been brought up, let's talk about the film's biggest issue. It's afraid to tackle the character of Cruella head on. Because Disney nowadays seems completely incapable of writing a female villain without having girl boss vibes, all of her rougher edges from her previous incarnations are almost completely smoothed out or downplayed significantly. The entire film feels like it's walking on eggshells, and in a film that aspires to be an audacious character study and origin of a villain, you can't do that, especially with a character as wild, insane, and over the top as Cruella. Compare this to the director's previous film, I, Tonya, which is also something of a villain origin story, albeit based on a real person. That film, while ultimately taking a more sympathetic stance of Tonya Harding than you might expect, still showcases her flaws and makes no apologies for it. It doesn't glamorize her, it presents her as the deeply flawed person that she was, which makes for a very interesting character. However, the entire time I was watching Cruella, I was wondering why they didn't bother just making this a standalone film. Why on earth did this need to be a villain origin story for Cruella de Vil? I mean, besides money. This feels like a story about a completely different character for much of the runtime, but every 10 minutes or so, they include a reference to remind you, oh yeah, this is supposed to be Cruella. Anytime she says something even remotely similar to the original Cruella, she'll follow it up with an, I'm just kidding. Because we don't want to make the parents and the audience nervous about what they took their kids to see in this PG-13 movie. Like the moment where she makes someone think that she killed and skinned her dogs, but then the audience is reassured that she didn't actually kill and skin those dogs. Yeah, because it would be just so awful if they realized that Cruella is actually supposed to be the villain. To put it simply, this film just straight up does not understand the character. And I'm sorry, for what's supposed to be a villain origin story, understanding the character is kinda the most important part. Also, in the first 10 minutes, we get to see the motivation as to why Cruella hates Dalmatians. Her mother was killed by Dalmatians. No, I'm not kidding. This is a real thing that happens in this movie. It is so unintentionally hilarious, and the presentation of the entire scene is just so off kilter that it's indistinguishable from parody. Even more hilarious is the film's third act twist, which takes plot beats straight out of a bad soap opera and plays them up with the utmost sincerity. I am genuinely at a loss for words for how laughably bad some of these decisions are. And maybe these decisions could work if the film had an ounce of self awareness about it, but the film plays these major plot beats completely straight. So, okay, as an origin story, this film is a complete failure. But what if you ignore the fact that this character is supposed to be Cruella? Actually, in that regard, it's not that bad. For the most part. Don't get me wrong, the film structure is a complete mess, and there are a few mind-numbingly stupid scenes. But there are some good points here as well. The acting in this film is mostly really good. Emma Stone is fantastic and works as best she can with the material. When she's allowed to be Cruella, she's actually really, really good. Emma Thompson also has a presence as the Baroness. Joel Fry and Paul Walker Hauser are perfectly cast as Jasper and Horace. The costume work in this film is absolutely spectacular, and I would be shocked if this film wasn't nominated for an Oscar for its costumes. There's an occasional inspired moment, like the manner in which Cruella sabotages the Baroness's fashion show with dresses inside a safe. I have to admit, that was genuinely clever, and it didn't need to be spelled out to the audience. And speaking of which, the film's heist moments were mostly entertaining. And if the film had chosen to focus on that element of the film, I think this would have been a lot better. The film's mostly well shot, it looks nice, sleek, and polished, but unfortunately, the film's biggest weakness lies in its screenplay. And given how fundamentally broken the film's script is, starting with the premise itself, a fabulous look is not going to be enough to salvage this mess. It doesn't matter how much you polish a turd, it's still a turd. Had this simply been an Ocean's 11 style heist film, or a rivalry film about two morally gray individuals, a la The Prestige or The Favorite, or if the film had the guts to embrace its more wicked side, this could have been a lot of fun. I mean, heck, the film has some moments of amusing satire of the fashion industry. It could have focused on that. Instead, the film is overwrought, overlong, unfocused, and does not understand Cruella or the original film. On a lesser note, the film's inclusion of Roger and Anita in what accounts to extended cameos are completely pointless and irrelevant to the story. Also, the dogs are almost always CG, and they look very, very uncanny. Also, this film is 133 minutes long, making it the longest Disney live action remake to date, and it did not need to be. The pacing could have definitely been afforded to be tightened up. All in all, for a film that did not need to exist, it ultimately feels like a missed opportunity, ironically enough. Which is tragic because this film is much better than it had any right to be. But at the end of the day, they missed the target. There are so many avenues this film could have taken, but it simply tried to do a little bit of everything, and as such, it never forms into a cohesive, concise product. The ingredients for a fun film are in here, all the pieces are in place, but something in the execution just got screwed up. I'm going to give Cruella a 5 out of 10. It's not the worst thing ever, and to be honest, I wouldn't bemoan having to sit through it again, but I don't consider this to be a good movie. And now to officially update my ranking of the Disney live action remakes. I would place Cruella right between Alice in Wonderland and Lady and the Tramp. So, congratulations, Cruella. You are in the upper echelon of the Disney live action remakes. What an accomplishment. Alright, that's going to be it for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and share. And make sure to subscribe to be notified of any future videos. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.